working with Arnold. Everyone knows how to use the Zoom and everything. Nowadays, most people that I was talking, I was making some questions about what is this challenge to go home work, and how buildings, as an architect, and how buildings are important. Our main work is not housing. We work a lot with planning, mostly in industry, factories, and offices. But nowadays, our office became home. So that's why we did this presentation on this way. Was a long checking, seeing what people are talking along the world. And we found out a lot of curious things that I want to share with you today. So I hope it's useful. Thank you for the change from yesterday, because I wanted to make some more appointments here on this moment. And anytime you want to make any question or introduce any situation, let us know. I want just on the end, if everyone can write their biggest challenge when they went home. I would like to make a share on the end, because I think it's important to us to interact and not just me talking. So if everyone just make a question on your head along the presentation, and you will see that some challenges you think you had, others will become, and the way you think about your building and about your house, it's a lot different now. So let's go for it. So most people were planning and thinking, experts were telling that in 230 we will be really aware, and these changes that we are feeling now, we will change in 230. But everything came sooner. So in 220 we are feeling on our bodies and our everyday change. And everyone was saying at the beginning, it's so long and we don't know when it's going to end. But nowadays, every day, I think people are getting adapted to be home and seeing that challenges. So it was really, we never thought that today we will be thinking about this and talking about how to be home and how it would feel. So how is going to be the future? What are our ability? And I'm sure that when we talk with the team today saying you have to be home for 2 days to finish this project, everyone will be more adapted to do it, and others will say no, we have to check and feel the team every day. So now everything that comes on our heads is why we stay home. We have to stay home. That is declared the spread. We have to contain this. That's the only way we can control behaving. I did a small trip these days, and of course 100% controlled. And even with all this declaration and everything, people still don't have some abilities to protect themselves. And we're gonna give here some advices how to do it. But we have to think about the future and the building. How is going to be life after the COVID-19? Will we think about our houses, or will we buy our houses the same way? Private and business, yes, that's one of the things. Okay, yes, we will check that also. Lifeboat mix, and that's the thinking of our head about it. So what's to learn? How to practice with people, how to practice on business, and how our practice will be different in environments. What depends on the future, what we will do. And that's some things I'm sure, 100% sure, that the way we do projects, the way people will talk with us about the projects is a lot different. But with this presentation, we already expect a little bit the future, and I want to share this opinions with everyone. So let's see if it goes on. It didn't change. Yes. So we're going to talk this in 3 subjects. One of it is health measures, how to manage it a good way. Because when we bought our house, or when we rent our house, or when we design our house, and when we organize it, we didn't think a lot of things that we have to be really aware now. So we need to make air and to make humidity and ventilation passing from a clean area to a dirty area. So what happened in factories and everything is we have to have always clean air for managing the factory, to managing our life. And here one advice we give always is to increase the ventilation. I know people are closed home, but please open the windows in the morning, open the windows on the end of the day, because you need new air, you need new humidity coming inside. So it's really important to increase ventilation. I saw yesterday, was really interesting, that how is spread COVID inside a mall. When a person that has COVID just sneeze on, what happens? And the impact is huge in a big area, because of course this doesn't go by the air, but on that seconds before, on 1 or 2 minutes, it can be spread over the things that are around and over us. So if you have always ventilation working, it will reduce a lot that's happening of the COVID. Also the humidity, you have to have a certain humidity. We know that low humidity environments, so the dry areas, is also not good for COVID. So the most you can control, and people nowadays will ask me on the projects, how can I control the humidity? That on the past, nobody cared about that. They just want to be the building to not lose energy. But nowadays, it's not going to be only energy. It's also going to be about the humidity that you can have and the ventilation. And filter the air. Something that people never was concerned about is their conditions filters, their conditions system, whatever they do of climate inside their houses nowadays. And everything I'm saying is the same for their offices. So to reduce this impact, we have to open the ventilation. Something that happened here on the office on the beginning, that people were a little bit concerned. I said, I doubled ventilation. We change our filter every month. That's something I do because I have allergies. I'm really sensitive to that, so I'm doing the same to all the team. And now with this study, we understood that it's more and more important. So if we need to have a good air moving in and out, we know that if we walk outside and we don't have impact with anything, we don't have COVID. So try to make your houses a lot more healthy for you and for the future. So now we know that air is really important for nowadays and for the future. So it's going to be a double need. And if we are not inside an environment that was good, we can make it better. What happened on the past is people think about house like a place to them to rest and to be for some hours, because the most time of our day it's on office. Nowadays, it's a lot more important to us to understand that we can be working home. So we have to make their buildings better to be a protection and not to be a place that we can get contained. Because imagine that your building, you are in an apartment and someone gets sick. You have to be 100% sure that the ventilation that is common between the building, it's ventilated. We have to look to the social part, not just for our house. We have to look to all the building where we live. So this is so important to planning and to project and how things can happen. And the other thing is relate the virus transmission for 50%. We have some studies that say that you can make that reducing having good air and ventilation. And other kind of allergies and influence of rhinovirus and others on the future, people will be more concerned about it. So this is some harvest the Financial Times information. So another thing is cleaning routines. So what happened on the past, we had a cleaner once a week, and suddenly we had to have a cleaner every day. We have to disinfect everything that we put our hands. If we go to shopping, we wash our hands when we go and come, but also we have to remind all the time that we have to clean every stuff we buy from the shopping, because I don't know if someone was sneezing on it, so we have to check everything. And we're gonna give a suggestion in architecture in how we can take care of it, so it's really interesting. Also remind people to clean their hands, because easily when we are in work or doing something in our days, we just forget to do it. So we must remind people, and we have to give products to them to take care of it. So It's a recommendation that we have to do all the time, never forget. So every place I go now, we see a place saying you have to wash your hands this way. So it's a change also. Another thing is, are buildings ready to us to work home? Because we saw already some images on the TV that there's some parents home with the 3 or 4 kids crying and they don't know what to do. And this news about kids are going to be home and no school, it's going to give a big impact. Do we have rooms for everyone to be working properly? I know we can put the phones, we can put everything, but when we bought our house, we think about it, because the buildings are just common areas. Family want to be socially together. We have to be socially together, but we have to think about the projects and our organization. The layout of our houses must be done by a way that we can first ventilate, second control the environment, and also we can just sit and start working. So we have, another thing that is really important is we have to have an area to work and an area to be, not to be all together. So it's really important, this change. And I know in the past nobody cared about it, but nowadays it's becoming more important to have our environment with a nice view, with a nice window to us to work, and then we just come out inside to be with the family. So we must have the spaces organized inside. Another really important thing, I had some complaints about some people on the team that they said, no, but I'm great home on the first 2 days, but I'm not feeling good, my bags and everything. And some people just forgot the ergonomic side of things. So we need to guarantee that we have a good screen. For example, I had some people on the team saying to me that they had problems on their backs. I said, are your screens up? Are your laptops up? Because we changed from a normal screen to a laptop, a small laptop. Did you change your, and they have to put higher. So the things we already did on the team, because of the rules, we had to make sure that team is doing it home. So take care of yourselves, set up the place with the same comfort you have on office, a good chair. Some people took the chairs home. So we wanted to guarantee that they have really all that, it's small things that we don't think, but the chair, the table, the place that the computer is really important to us to be later on working and not to be just in the bed thinking. Another thing that we are really related, we are experts here for 10 years in fire and safety. And if you ask me, the main thing I think it's important, all the things I said is important, is our buildings and our houses ready for fire and safety? Because on the past, people were 20 to 30 times in a day, they can be 20% of their time home. Now they're all the day home. We have more people home and we cook and we do different things. We have more showers and everything. So are the houses ready for this? Are the buildings where you live ready for this? For example, if it's a fire on the floor under you, are you protected? This is a question nobody did. We as a fire and safety experts in Portugal for this 10 years, 10 for 11 years, people were just doing it because it was an obligation. I'm sure now people are concerned, and I'm sure you guys are thinking about, is my building protected? Is my house protected? If you don't have an extinguisher, have one home. Have an ABC extinguisher home, a small one, because if something happened, you have to be safe. But there's another thing. So if the horn, if you have the siren, the touching, people know how to go outside, but they are supposed to be inside. Do people go outside? Nobody asked this, because COVID says us to be inside. But if it's a fire, I have to go outside, of course, with safety. So all these questions are being done to people. I'm asking everyone, is your building ready? They said, no, I'm not going to do anything now, but we can make a checklist to you to check. I can help you to go all over your building to check if the fire safety is working. So this is something that it guarantees continuously on your building, on your house, but also on your office. Because if you are a building owner, if you own your business, your office, you have to think, is it safe? If it happens something, I'm not there. Do everything work? So this is something that it's a big concern because fire destroys everything. Of course, COVID can make us sick, but fire destroys everything we can have. So we don't want to lose it. And the fear makes people think about this. So it's something really important. I know we were checking also some information about Chinese. They're not buying luxury stuff. They're just checking about health. They're preparing themselves to the future because they felt what it was missing. And one of the parts they're buying is cameras and everything related to safety, for fire and safety. So this is a suggestion, and some studies say this is really important. And a question I do to you is, imagine today that when you enter your building to go home, you have an area with UV that can take off any chance to you to be bringing COVID home. This is something nobody thinks about. We do this for factories. So for example, if you have a controlled area in a lab, we have to manage this kind of areas that you are disinfected. So when you go inside, nobody can get any sicknesses, any kind of thing inside. But this way, you can all. If our buildings had an area that we were cleaned inside to go inside, and this is all by the air, so you can have a lot of kinds of environments. You can have an UV. The heating is not good because it's more than 70 degrees to kill it. But if you have a really UV system, for some seconds you just get inside and just go outside. You can implement this in your buildings, inside your house, in the entrance of your house, to put the shoes, to put everything, just pass it there, and when you go inside, you're safe. I think if we think this on the past, we will be safer today, and it's not happening. So disinfecting zones, it's the way that in the future we can get protected. And if we have these lamps with ultraviolet radiation everywhere, they're expensive, but we have to increase and see if factories are investing on this, because this will be the future. It wasn't really in some factories, but now it's going to be really, really important. Also in our houses, and now when we go back to our offices also. In times of pandemic, we need to reduce the contact. So this came a lot challenging how we do almost everything home. About this challenging, about the private business, completely mixed down. So we want to guarantee that whatever we do, we have to, this quarantine, we need to be home, but we need to have quality of the fresh air and everything we have around. We have concerns about food. We are buying a lot less food. We are planning our recipes. We're planning everything. So make sure your spaces have fresh air. So after this mandatory self-isolation, the residential buildings will be managing, for example, something we never think about because we were home for some hours is we need a garden. We need to be out of the city. Something that I'm sure it's going to happen is a lot of people will be buying small houses 1 or 2 hours from the big cities to have some peace and pieces. If something happen, I can come here, have my kids, because one thing, I don't have them home. They are outside having fun. It's a protected area. But a lot of people will start buying small houses outside. Don't need to be really big environment, but need to have all this checklist I was talking about. So investors will be more, even investors, when they do their buildings, they will ask us to do gardens, to do areas, social areas, but protected social areas. So it's a big change on the planning. All the designing, for example, when we do surfaces, people wanted fancy surfaces. Now they want easy cleaning areas. And is this material getting us something to grab there, or is easy cleaning? So it's some concerns on the plan that will appear. And all the water system you have, you want to make sure it works. So you don't want the water from the outside, from the, for example, if you have a pumping system that you can have on outside houses, not on cities, but you want to make sure that the water have quality and doesn't get anything. On the past, people were not really concerned about it. It's water, it's safe. No, they want to make sure they have all the tests and the water is safe. So all the filters, all the system, they want to guarantee the quality. Another thing is to work from home changes all the environment. So now from home, under business expert, future business travel become less essential. So something I understood from the past is when we wanted to do a conference call with the client, if he was really far away, we'll accept it. But another time they will say, why you're not coming to meet us? Nowadays, people understand why we're not going there, and they even want us not to go. Of course, in our business, it's a little bit hard to make measurements for building up there, but we already prepared all the team to use the masks and use the gloves to go just to enter the building and come outside. But residential buildings, we have to consider all the design. Even the buildings that exist, we have to make some changes. I know that buildings that only have windows, if you can't go a step outside, it's a lot different. That's why people come outside singing and breathing to feel the new air. So now supermarket is so important to go. When we walk just 10 minutes outside is amazing. So when we walk outside 10 minutes, we have to be still protected. So all this planning will be changing. So for conclusions, healthy buildings will be the road on the future. So we are working home and we have to create a better healthy world. Building healthy indoors environments will be essential. So we will invest a lot more in technology and more in air condition, good ventilation systems. We don't need to have a mechanic air system to work. We can have really good systems, and we do that a lot for fire and safety. That in case of fire, the top opening just opens. We have to make sure that the system works alone. And here we have to have a system that we can control. So I'm going to be home. For example, I travel for 1 week. I want to go home and make sure that I touch a button and it all works. So it's a big challenge for us about all this prevention. And climate changes, as you understand it, training again, I'm sure it's a little bit less pollution on the air. And because of that, also the weather just came a little bit back. So we want to make sure that our ability on the future, we are prepared for it. So I just finished. Any questions? I had here the most challenging being home is manage business life and both are completely mixed. Yes, as I told, this was Arnold, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as I told, it's we are when we just rented a small house. Now we understand that it can be small, but it has to be. I don't know if you are curious about the Japanese architecture. They are really interesting because they sleep in small areas, and when they wake up, they transform their beds in an office, and then they just transform to a kitchen. So I think all the system, Tadolando architect is really good on that. And he even to rest, he has a small area that he goes to the roof, closes. He only has windows, and he just makes his meditation there. So it's a really small area, but nowadays we have to have an area that is closed for everything. But fastly we just put the bed on the wall, and it just became a living room. So I'm sure all this you're talking about of it, and for the kids is the same. I know it's not easy. We have to, one thing that I was checking on a podcast yesterday is, did you train your kids to be on their environment? And if they have an environment. So the first stage is to prepare an environment for them, explain to them, this is the rules from 9. We just have, one thing is really important is rules for the kids, not only the environment, because we have to prepare an area for them to play, to them to see the TV, to get school. And then we have to have some stops on our day to be with them, but they have to know that they have to be on that area. They can't stop and go around, but they have to go back on that area. That's the biggest challenge we have with the kids nowadays, that they have to know that now I'm doing this, and they can enter the room because it's not allowed to enter. And the worst thing for parents to say it's no for the kids and we have to make the rules. I think that's the biggest challenges my friends and me are having. I don't have them all the weeks. I have them 1 week and the other don't. But when they come, we have to make the rules because they have different rules on the other house. They come and we say, rules. You know that from this time, when you see me with the phone, without phones, you can talk with me, and so and so. But it's not easy. School activities for kids. Yes, it's something I think the government doesn't understand the impact, because until September, have the kids home, it's going to be really challenging. So that's why I'm saying, if you have an area, even put a line. I don't know if you know, for small kids, that carpets that have the traffic and have all the things. My suggestion is to buy that areas to them, buy it online in IKEA and others, and say, this is your area, this is your background to you to work. Don't come to my office here. So if you put lines on their heads, kids are 100% visual on this when they're really small. And so one of the challenging is to make areas for them. So this carpets, put lines, make games with them with lines, and they will understand. You will see, if you play with them for half an hour in this environment closed, and you show that they have to be there, if you leave, they will be there at least 1 hour. So it's interesting how to tease the kids. You have to make playing with them and come back playing with them, and they will be there, and you just leave. Of course, they will come after you half an hour, so you go back with them. So you have to train them. It's not like dogs, but they're your kids, so you have to train them to say, you have to do it here. So I know it's a huge challenge. I don't have the recipe, so I'm just, as an architect, I'm a lot, since I started my working, one of the main things to have success is to see what people do when they're not understanding that you're looking to them. I see what people do in the subway. I see what people do in social areas, in big monuments, where they put themselves, because it's so important when planning, when we do a project, how people, where they go. And home, I do the same. So I see what attracts them. So I just try to take them there and say, this is your area. I draw things, I put buildings. I even do like, I don't know if you guys see, but like a small wall to them to stay there, and they just put it down. It's fine, but they're having fun with that. So make it architecturing, make part of their part. So it's really interesting to see how they start making fun with that, but put lines and put ways to them to be. I don't know if I helped, if you had that idea, but if you have suggestions altogether, it will be good, because everyone have kids.
Yeah, and Susan, I imagine that now with the COVID, and that the fact that everybody is spending more time at home, do you think there will be new regulations, and in terms of new I mean, constructing new residential or new office buildings, and yeah, it's about the new regulation. How fast do you think it will come? And also for architectures, like architect like you, I imagine this is a time to also think about the redesigning of the space we live in, and I mean, I'm sure architects are already taking that into account, but that's probably something which we'll be looking at more now because of this situation.
Yes, about regulations, I'm sure the North countries will be faster than Portugal for sure, because we see how Norway, Finland, they're even doing movies about how the COVID spreads inside a restaurant and everything. So I'm sure the North countries will be faster making these changes, as Germany and so. The regulations will come, I'm sure. If what happened is, if we are quick, people will start implementing it, because they're home and they're trying to save their businesses, and they need to say to their teams that it's safe to come to office again. There's going to be a lot of stress because people are not thinking about this, but are already expecting in 1 month or 3 weeks or whatever. When I say to people, you have to come to office, just 50% of you, some won't come. I'm not saying my team, but I'm imagining factories with 200 people. And if exists physically changes saying, when you guys enter, you're protected because everyone passes by this area to be disinfected and it's gonna work. This is challenging. So regulations will exist. I'm sure the government in Portugal will implement some changes, mostly on offices, because for new buildings, every law that is made in Portugal, it's for new buildings. But this kind of thing impact every life, everyone. So they're gonna ask like fire and safety. Even fire and safety regulation from today will be obligation in the new buildings, but they obligate us also to improve the old buildings. So the regulations will come for sure about this, because this is COVID was a huge shake, and people understand that they have to make changes. So I'm sure this is just the first step to all the regulations be looking around, like fire and safety, COVID, healthy, how to, for another example, in the on the beginning of March, I had I have a factory inspection. They do it 7 in 7 years, and I was there with my client as a consultant because we did all the licensing. And the first thing the client said to me, Susan, you have to have an isolation room. I said, you guys didn't care about the doctor area. You didn't care because I asked you to change some things and you said, let's see if the entity says something. But nowadays they want an isolation room. Of course, today they want a different thing because we are already studying the solutions as a disinfecting area to enter. So planning is changed, redesigning is going to change, the way people do housing is changing, everything will change. So I'm sure. And that's why on this time that we have a lot of work, but we're doing this preparations about the studies, how to not to make too much changes on your building, but to make an effective change. And I think the solution I give you today of a disinfecting area, of course, that is something outside, but on the future, when you enter a building, you're going to have that for sure, because we have to guarantee that nothing enter inside our building. So I'm sure it's going to change the regulations. And the more people study about it, the more we know this COVID. We are not preparing ourselves only for COVID because others can come. And even yesterday, the Minister of Health was saying that don't stop taking vaccines because people just stuck home. No, because other things can appear because people are not prepared for it. So buildings have to change, and all the way we were, sometimes we're saying make a garden, make a environment outside just to go to smoke, and people say, no, it's not needed. It's people, they can go to the rain. Nowadays, nobody's gonna say that. So it's changing. People still don't think about it because they're concerned about how to pay their people, how to get clients, how to maintain their clients. That's what the business owners are thinking. That's the people I'm talking more. Of course, I talk with my friends, but mostly with business owners. Nowadays, I'm not working as a sales. I'm just knowing if my clients are okay, just to make them a call. And I said, what are your concerns? I said, Susan, we have to make some changes here. And all this presentation was about things I picked up on them, and I'm already seeing solutions. And this disinfecting area for me is something it's going to be implemented, cannot be 100% this way, but it's going to be implemented because it already exists in some factories for their product. When you buy a pharmaceutical product, you can imagine how many disinfecting areas that exist. The technology exists. We just need to adapt it to our housing. So it's not going to be hard, but we have to do it the cheapest way possible because business owners don't have money now. So we have to try to implement things that it's not expensive, but effective. So it's a nice challenge. I already passed that some years ago with the economic crisis. People saying no, 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 and you have to say you have to implement fire and safety. They said no, no, no. But nowadays, I'm sure clients that invested say my building is safe. I can be home because everything is okay. So rethinking the architecturing 100%. All the engineering is going to change also, because everything we talked about today, all of it, for example, the mechanic engineer that do all the ventilation system, the client was paying the project just for, it's an obligation. The municipality is asking her. Nowadays, they're going to ask questions to the engineer. So it's really interesting how things are changing. Of course, we have to see the good part of it, that I want to live in a place that is safe, not just for robbing. Something it's happening. I don't think you guys are feeling it. I arrived Monday morning really late, and people that are driving the cars nowadays by 10 o'clock in the night, don't open the window and talk with them, because it's not nice people, because everyone is home and there's some guys robbing around. So even cars, I talked with the insurance guy from our company. I said, what's happening? And he said, every day people come that they just rob their house or they rob their car. So the garages are being attacked now. We don't feel it because we're home, but it's happening. So we are more, when everyone comes inside, outside becomes more not so safe. So at the day it's okay, but if you are in an area with no one, be careful, because you have, it's something in planning that will become also, it's the safety of places. So we have to be in an environment that we control. Like, I don't know if you know Moroccan plans, but the housing are done always with a big backyard. The house is around and we have a backyard. It's going to become more used in Portugal, because in Europe, because we want to be in an environment outside, but inside. Nobody goes inside. So it's interesting. All the planning will change for sure.
Yeah.
More questions?
I have a few, actually, if I can. Thank you for the presentation. Very interesting. It's actually a subject that I like a lot, this type of contingency measures. I've been working with them a lot, maybe because I was in the military school for 11 years and real estate. So you can actually look at this from the point of view of changing our environment, or maybe when you buy a new house, but also investments you do. And you mentioned there a few things I didn't have any answers for. Maybe you can enlighten me. These UV filter, UV lights, they are not unhealthy for the people?
Sorry, what
the UV lights that you mentioned for the cleaning area, aren't they dangerous?
No.
They're not.
The only problem, for example, when I was selling pools, I was in a company for pools for years, and the safest system to use on water was UV.
On water, but
yeah, but you can, there's system. I have some industries that you just get inside, you don't know, but you're just passing by a UV.
And would you have any actual solutions that you can buy off the shelf to install at home? No.
Yes, they're really expensive, but they exist. Yes.
Yeah. Well, the price we have to seek out. But you also mentioned a few things that I actually do a lot, which is ventilation at home. I always do that every day. But I also worry about the rest, because we're talking about COVID here. So there's a few things that in this case apply, others might not apply. For instance, you might want to have a completely airtight solution at home, which we don't never have. Because you talk about ventilation because the air comes out, but I mean, you have now Chernobyl on fire. You have Krakatoa on, you have earthquakes ongoing, and no one is really talking about it. And this Chernobyl is interesting because it's burning stuff and it's sending it away, and you never know what happens. So a solution at home that it's completely airtight. Do you know anything, any solution to do that?
So what happened is you can have not only UV, but you can have good filters. You can have water system filters for some air. I can put you in contact with one of our engineers from the team. And
well,
I
think it's more about curiosity, because as you said, the prices are too high, but so I don't want to make anyone spending time on that. It's just an observation that we cannot take COVID and say, okay, let's prepare for this or forget that it existed. You mentioned that obviously the impact on the environment is bigger and bigger, and these things will start increasing. So our homes will become more and more the places where we spend time for, and that's the thing. So instead of changing the curtains, maybe we can invest on maybe changing the part or maybe make it more safe. And so that was mainly my two questions about if there's solutions for airtight on windows and doors and the UV filters. If you can send me anything, I can then search a bit more.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, really interesting.
Water filters inside the because you also said that if you live in the field, I mean, in the countryside, you have to be careful with the water. I'm not very keen on the running water at home, tap water for drinking, because they do abuse a bit on the on the chlorine and stuff. But
yeah.
You might have a problem that although the water is not contaminated these days, in case of an earthquake or some floods, it might arrive contaminated to your place. I've been thinking a lot about putting a filter in the sink at the kitchen for cooking and drinking. But if you think about it, if it's really, really dangerous, then you might as well want it for the showers as well. So is there good filters that you can put at the entrance? You know,
yes, you can. One suggestion I do to you, we did it in some factories also, that you can use the water of the rain, filter it, and use it perfectly. We have some factories. We did some projects that the water, we put the system inside to bring water doubled. We have one from the container outside and one from the normal system. What happened is, if something happened, you just switch. You can save water because you don't pay the water, but also you control the water is coming inside. Okay. So you don't need to use it to drink, but this system, you can put a filter just on the entrance, on the exit, that controls 100% the water you're drinking. It's a system that is used a lot in the aquariums, and it works pretty well. So it's really interesting how you can control everything you have around. And another thing that is a suggestion when this happens is, we know the water that comes from the rain, it's more and more polluted. So what happened is, one in 1 month or 2 in 2 months, on the beginning, when you make the tank and all the system, you must make some tests in lab. And then you will do it like 3 in 3 months or 6 in 6 months. You check, you see the tank is good, fine, and let it go. Another thing you have to be concerned is Legionella. If you have that kind of tank, you have to be really concerned about it, because nobody cared about it until 2 or 3 years ago. But all the regulations, that's why I told Arnold, it's going to come regulations about this COVID and all the things we have to do. And Legionella now is something we are implementing in all clients. So if you have a tank, make sure you just take all the water once a year, all outside, to don't have anything stop. If you don't use the water, of course. If you use the tank, it's fine. But if you don't use, you have to make concern about it. Okay?
Thank you.
I hope it's useful.
Hello, Susan.
Hi, João.
Thank you very much for your presentation also. Just 2 or 3 questions, simple questions. One, I have a workshop, a car workshop. I have good facilities. It's like a premium workshop, but and I like to. I have my own office, and then I have the reception, of course. And some days of the week, I like to be in the reception with the other guys, with my team, because it's a way to be with them and to understand what is happening and all that. I think maybe this kind of problems like COVID, this kind of thing is going to, it might change a little bit this kind of way of, I'm not going to say management, but dealing with people, because the reception, it's a small place, a small area. So maybe people, I can think like that. Should I go there? Should I be with them? Or the reception is going to be only for the receptionist because of the cleaning, or it's his area and I have to stay inside my office, you know? And so is this going to change the mindset of open spaces to closed spaces, you know, in the companies, or not?
Yes, what's going to happen, you're going to have a mix. What I feel is going to have a mix of things. First of all, the suggestion is to make sure you have all these concerns about ventilation, because most people close the doors or close the windows because the government obligates us to make areas with ventilation, but the window is enough. But if you never open the window, or you don't have a system that grabs the air from inside to outside, for example, in our office, we have a conduct that takes the air from outside, brings the the air from the windows outside. So we are always cleaning the air inside the area. But what people complain is it's cold, because it's cold outside, so the air comes inside, and what people do, they just close everything. And that's a suggestion I do to you, to make sure about the ventilation, to make sure about the humidity inside. The other thing is you have to guarantee the cleaning. For example, if the receptionist is a person that has a big family or contacts with a lot of people, of course you have to make some away from him, okay? So you're gonna be more concerned about it. But if it's a person that you trust him and you know that his environment is 100% controlled, you're gonna be close to him. I'm giving the example, my assistant here, she doesn't come every day, so we are just mixing. Some days she's here and others are not, so the office is always open just with one person. And what we do is, I know what's happening with her. I know who is home. I know what's around her. So I control what's happening. I'm not asking just to know. I just need to know if she's safe and if I can be close to her or not. Of course, I don't breathe over her, but I go to her office and I talk with her from the door. But I guarantee the cleaning. If you do cleaning every day, you guarantee the environment is okay. What you can be more concerned is not about the receptionist. It's about the clients that come inside. Yeah. So what you want to guarantee is the entrance from their clients to you, and you don't need to do physical thing. For example, when you go inside the taxi now, they have a area that they don't get anything, but we can get because their client was there. Yeah. So we have to look to the area, see if you can get an environment that you save your receptionist, but you also. So you are inside an area that is controlled physically, and anything that come inside, you still contact with them. You still need to talk with your clients. So you need to say that it's safe,
it's the engineering, not the division.
But do all that control. So it's a suggestion I do to you. Don't stop talking with people. Don't stop going there. For example, you can switch with the receptionist. You can say to them, you are here. Okay, today I'm going to do receptionist. You're going to do something else. Not to be so much in contact, but okay, this cleaning happened yesterday, so I'm going to be clear here. You just grab your computer and go there. You don't use his laptop. You understand me? So you just do things differently. Every time I do something, I just think, okay, this can give COVID to anyone? No, okay, so I can do it. So I'm all the time asking it to train all the team also what to do. So if I grab this, if I go, for example, I was explaining to clients that if their building is empty for 2 weeks, we can go there. It's safe to us and safe to them, to us, to make the measurements and go outside. Yeah. But 2 weeks ago, they didn't let me work because I said, you have a huge building, let the team go there, and they don't want. So people have to we have to live. We have to maintain ourselves living. So, but we have to make this controls on the areas where we work to make sure. So if the receptionist is really small, maybe you have to change it to be a little bit bigger, to make some changes. So that's a suggestion. Your office doesn't need to be so bigger. We can just take the area and change. That's something I can look and help you. It will be a pleasure to do it because it's something you have to think about, but not as it's going to change everything. No, we're going to get used to how to protect ourselves. So one thing I think the government is doing well and I'm not going to give an opinion, but they're panicking people. But we have to still work. So if you have a mask and you have a glove, you have to work. But when I leave my client office, I change everything I have. I just clean my hands and go on. I can't stop working. So, but I need to protect everyone around me and myself. And you have to mostly protect your receptionist because he has contact from the clients and all the team behind. That's why an area for the UV radiation control inside your entrance. You will control your clients and you will control your team and you will work freely inside. So it can be a good suggestion for you. Of course, you have to see where to do it and the investment, but it's something is going to happen. Not the receptionist. First, you have to control the door, okay? And you're not going to have 20 clients coming inside to see the cars. You just control how they enter and where they enter, okay?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Sorry, Susan, just with regard to the safety, because you mentioned about work areas, but what about when our children actually do go back to school, and what kind of measures, which, you know, because just listening to what you're saying, we're talking about adults and you're talking about businesses, and it's much easier to control and adults understand. But the reality is it'll be September, if we're lucky, when the kids go back to school, and what can we say to the schools? What kind of measures can they put in place to protect our children?
Yes, the first thing is we need regulation. So anything we can make obligation. Of course, when it's private school, it's easier to talk with them. And even my suggestion is start asking what you're going to do. And if they don't know what to do, make suggestions about disinfecting areas when the kids are around. But something I'm sure, and I had that experience with mine, they don't control their hands. They touch themselves all the time. I say, don't touch things, and they're just touching. So the school is it's one of the worst areas to control. So there must be cleaning plans every day. They have to clean the school deeply. They have to have disinfecting areas when we go inside. Of course, this system I'm talking about is a box, but we know all the kids, when they enter, they pass with their pass to control, right? Why don't they pass by an area that they are disinfected? That will be the best to be done. I don't know if it's going to be done. The government has to make that obligation, but in my suggestion is start asking when this phase passes in 1 month or 3 or 4 weeks, start asking the school, what are you guys going to do? I want to know, because I'm gonna send my kids home to school. I want to make sure everything is fine. They can put products, they can disinfect, but in just one kid that brings it can take it home to everyone. So it's one of the part that is more, it's the behaving, it's not possible to control. So you have to have barriers when kids go inside, and they have to not just train them, but because fire and safety, for example, is really easy to train them. They just go on a line, they come outside, they think it's a game. But for this, it's something that they touch themselves all the time. They touch stuff on the table. So disinfecting areas all over the school, but mostly on the entrance is the main thing. So all the environment around has to be clean. If we guarantee that on schools, people can go back to school. But I think the worst, that's why Portugal is delaying so much the entrance. First, they don't know what to do. They didn't have time to think about it. Second, they didn't study solutions to introduce in buildings. So that's why we did this study. We were investigating a lot. And if we have disinfecting areas when you enter, just a box, it can be just this box you saw. You can have a lot of entrances that kids go around and they can be disinfected, but I'm not the person to tell you that you have to obligate the school to do it, right? So I think everyone can give suggestions, can give solutions. I can even do a manual for a school. That's something can be interesting about your question that just came to my head, that we can do a manual how to change your school to be safe. But as we already talked here, it's not only about COVID. There are other things that can come, and we have to make sure the kids are safe on school. So the main things is to make the entrance protected, because we don't know what other parents do. So we have to have these areas that the other thing that can happen, and it's something that has to be seen. I don't know if you remember that in some countries they were using the scans to be who has the red shadow to see who was sick or not. I think if they introduce some scanning when people go inside, it's another thing. On this area, on this box, disinfecting area, also they see who has a different shadow, and they just put the person on quarantine. So it can be another solution to clean and to help to us to be safe. One thing I assure you, nobody's going to be 100% safe. And no. Kids, but we have to do a lot of introductions to 1 or 2 introductions like this UV or another disinfecting system. And also this controlling of our temperature can be a solution to help.
Yes.
I hope I answered you.
No, thank you. No, it's something I will definitely raise with the school. You know, are they considering, you know?
Susan, I have a question. It's completely different. It's about the space. Portugal is very small. So I think the owners of the companies now are rethinking their models, and they are shifting their mentality, and also the employees, because they are now working from home, and they say, why should I leave my home to do my work so good? So I can enjoy my family, I can have quality of life. I don't want to go to Lisbon. I don't want to go muting and the cars and everything. I want to stay far away from the center. Do you think the space will change? The territory will have a shift. Companies can go further. Mafra, everything can go farther than Lisbon. Lisbon will get bigger. And we have quality of life, we have good employee satisfaction, and we'll have productivity. Do you think it's feasible for architecture, for new buildings and quality of life?
Yes, one thing I saw in Toronto, in Canada, is the Ernst & Young building. My cousin is one of the partners there. And the first thing I asked her, how you guys use the desks? And she said, no, we have here a computer. So I just come up to the office. I just chose the desk I'm gonna sit, and I sit. And tomorrow, so 80% of the desks were empty because everyone were home or on their clients. Yes. And what's gonna happen is, if we have 50 employees, we need 10 chairs. We don't need more. We don't need no more desks, because we don't need the offices so big. We need yes. more area for them to be comfortable, to bring their kids to office if it's needed, because that's the quality of life. But we don't need a physical area that this desk is mine. No, you use any desk. You just come in the morning and use the first desk you find, and tomorrow you just change. Of course, you need a storage area to put your stuff, but wherever you go, and the coffee area is the same. You just have a card and you use the coffee. So there are two things that can happen. First, some business owners are gonna take away their offices and go to smallers, because they're gonna test the team and say, no, we're gonna work at home, but first we need the law to change for the contracts for the employees. When that law changes, and I'm sure it's gonna happen, the offices can be smaller. So that way you don't need to be too much. You can be still in Lisbon, but for smaller areas. So it's going to be, for investors, really interesting to have more work offices, to have more buildings that have a lot of offices, but small. You don't need big areas. Call centers, you can have 80% of the team home. It's amazing how you have so much meter squares and suddenly you don't need it, because you can have 80% of the team home and you just have some meetings with them and conference call. You change the way you work with them, because you have a checklist to say you have to finish this until the end of the day. What happened if you don't change? So the managing, the leadership changed completely, but for them, our architecturing is changing. So it doesn't mean you don't need to go outside the place where you are to make your offices, but you can do them smaller because you don't have your team coming every day. So it's really interesting, that change. People will like, for example, my kid is sick. I just called the company saying, I'm not going, I'm going to work from home, but I have to make sure that I have everything. Another thing, for example, is companies buying the internet to use home. You don't need to, for example, the company has one internet. Nowadays, I'm already thinking, okay, these 3 guys are going to be mostly home because they're far away from office. I'm going to buy them internet to them to be home, to be quicker, because we can work. The problem we're having now is the internet doesn't work in our team because we have the big projects and we need to make it quite quicker. So all these small changes and thinking are changing. And I'm sure architecturing and the planning and opportunities to transform buildings, it's now. So nowadays we are not with so much work, but we're going to have a lot of work to make some changes on the buildings, and clients will come for the person that have more innovative ideas. So it's a huge challenges for architects and engineers. So thank you for your information. So it's really interesting.
Hi Susan, well done for the presentation this morning. Just a quick question in terms of safety in the home. Who's actually physically responsible for the employee, say for example, I'm an employer and my employees work from home, who's actually responsible for the safety of the employee within their own home? Is it the employee or is it the employer during their working hours?
The bad news, it's still the employer. For example, I was checking the insurance and saying, okay, let's, of course, for them, I'm a business person, but I was getting other information. So now how is gonna, the insurance, how is gonna happen? They said, no, you have to make sure, you have to give me the information where they live, where they work. For example, if you have workers that work inside or outside, me as a salesperson, my insurance is a lot more expensive because I'm in risk. I'm always outside. And nowadays, if your employees work outside, you are responsible for them, and you have to make an insurance for that, because you have to make sure that your team is working well. Like I told about the chair, about the environment, about everything. There's not a rule still saying you are responsible, but I'm sure that's gonna become to our shoulders as the employees. So think about the future, about be concerned about where they live, how they live, if it's safe or not, if they have the quality, because if they come with a complaint in 2 years because they have a problem on their shoulders, they will come to you for sure. Because that's the reality. We always know about it. Because but even the contracts, they have to change. So I think in the future the lawyers and the law will allow us to make agreements with the team. But nowadays, if something happens in someone's home, you are also responsible on that time that they are working for you. So it's something the government will come always after us, not after the employee. On the future, if there are contracts that separate that responsibilities, I'm sure it will be easier for us, and the insurance will go down. But nowadays, it's important to know if your employees are safe. Okay, thank you, Tiago. I hope I answer you, Jared.
Yeah, pretty much clarified some of the stuff. It's just I'm just thinking in terms of, say, for example, modifications that need to be done, like putting a fire extinguisher in a person's home. Health and safety rules that comes into play. I'm not too sure what the Portuguese health and safety rules, but here in Ireland, they're pretty much strict here. And there's other questions, like in terms of if something happened in a home, is the onus is on the employer to prove that it's not their responsibility, whichever the case that happened outside of the room of the employee officers, per se.
Yes, whatever happens nowadays here in Portugal, whatever happened home, we have the insurance for the home. But of course, if you ask me what the best to do is maybe to make a questionnaire to your employees. What is the conditions they're working? So that way you can say, no, I checked, everything was fine. So the insurance of their home has to go for it. So if you have a checklist of course we must not do this alone, but with our lawyers saying, okay, I want to make a questionnaire to all the team, how their conditions, where they work, how they work, make pictures, send to me information. If they have curtains that can get a fire, or have a floor that can burn, or the environment outside, if it's safe or not, if the rain comes inside and destroys the computer, who's the responsibility? So what I suggest you is to do some questionnaire to the team, and then the way they answer, you can say, okay, so you are responsible for this, and I have to make sure when you work, you are safe. So I don't have a solution really for that, but for us to preserve as employees is to ask them the conditions, and then pass a little bit it's everything in law in Portugal and whatever the country has said, what the law says. We make the questionnaire and put it from the employee side, part of it for him, part of it for us, and let us the regulation change to us then to implement some changes. But nowadays, if something happened, if my house burns, it's the house, it's the building and the house environment that has to be responsible. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think if anybody else has some questions, otherwise, can you hear me?
Yep, I'm
Yes.
hearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
we can
because
hear you.
my connection is not great, so sorry.
You need to change the internet.
Okay. I think that's it, yeah?
Yes, so if anyone sees any other subject about what I do and what we can do, if you want to send me an email and we can just appoint another webcast about offices or what to think about. And nowadays we don't have answers that we can have in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 1 month. Everything is changing. Make free to send me the email and I will be really free to give your feedback. It's good to make me questions because it helps me also to think about my clients. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was
Okay,
great.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good day,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thanks for
Have a good
everything.
day.
Take care.
Work
Cheers.
safely.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.